Today's guest is Jane Lee Rankin, who is a farmer and the founder of Apple Hill Farm, which is an award winning first generation farm in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. So she has written a book called Farm Family, a solo mom's memoir of finding home, happiness, and alpacas. And she has such an interesting story. She not only is a successful business person, she has a successful agritourism business. She talks about it. It's not just farming in the sense that we're used to farming, where, I think of farming as like dairy or beef, but she actually raises alpacas for their fur. So you're going to learn what the difference between an alpaca and a llama is, because I learned that. I did not know that. You might know, but I did not. That was exciting to learn that. But she has lots of other animals. She has a shop. She has where she sells the stuff, and her whole backstory so fascinating. She is a cancer survivor. She talks about that. She was a single mom from the get-go. She got pregnant, and as she was out of wedlock, which isn't unusual these days. But the the father of her child, wasn't really interested in being a father. And she chose to continue on with the pregnancy. And another one of her successful attributes is that she has a happy son who is now 24, which I love. So, obviously, a great mom while she is doing all the things. Clearly, working mom, juggling all the things. So she also, what else, other accolades she has is, well, first of all, she's an advocate for farmers throughout her leadership and involvement in the North Carolina Agritourism Networking Association in that industry. She's very passionate about what she does, which comes through. And I would wish everybody would find a passion like she did that day she visited a farm and fell in love with an alpaca. She also frequently speaks about this industry that she is in and the benefits of diversifying farm portfolios. So, and I'm not doing that very eloquently, but she talks a little bit about it in the episode about what her portfolio includes, which is more than just alpaca socks. But she talks about the work she does at conferences locally and nationally. And in 2021, she was the runner up for North Carolina Small Farmer of the Year. That is pretty incredible. So, without further ado, here is Jane Lee Rankin, who goes by Lee. Welcome to another episode of Living Your Spark Second Half. And I've got what I think will be a very interesting conversation today with Jane Lee Rankin. She goes by Lee, so that is her author name. She has her full name as for her book. Oh, she's gotten two books. I just found out she had a cookbook first, and now she's got a book about, and you can tell us about it in a bit. But she has a farming business, and she has a backstory that's super. I mean, I think, Lee, when I read your bio, it was like you have conquered so much in a short period of time. And so I can't wait to dig into that and for you to share like how you got to where you are today. And you just are so happy. You are like, you're smiling, you're giggling. We've been talking for probably 20 minutes. We just met each other. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and start where you want to start?
Okay. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. And I don't even know where to start because there is so much. Let me just talk a little bit about the farm and where the farm is.
Sure.
So, 22 years ago, I came to the mountains of North Carolina to start a farm. I wanted to raise alpacas
Where from?
and from Kentucky, from Louisville, Kentucky. And I'd also lived in the Catskill Mountains of New York and the Liberty
Mm,
Monticello area of New
pretty.
York,
Yeah.
lower Catskills. But we moved here, me and my son, who was 2 at the time, to start an alpaca farm. And we now have a very successful alpaca farm. We raise alpacas, llamas, Angora goats. So we're considered a fiber farm because the main thing we produce is fiber in the form of yarn, socks, fiber that we sell raw in different forms. And we're agritourism. So people come to the farm to take a tour, and we
Oh,
have a
neat.
store. So we have a few things going on here at the farm too.
I
So
love that. One of
yeah,
my
so
students
that's
had an alpaca farm when I was a Beachbody coach, actually,
uh-huh,
and she worked so hard on that farm, and she sent me some alpaca socks.
the
They were
best.
so amazing,
Yeah,
so
the
amazing.
best.
Yes,
The
so
best.
soft and so yeah. So I love those animals. I think that's so cool. But what made you want to start an alpaca farm? Plus, you moved and you are a single parent. So can you tell the story about how that happened?
Yeah, so we moved after meeting an alpaca. So it's really a love story, right? I met an alpaca when my son was 1 at the Kentucky State Fair. I'd never seen an alpaca before. Don't even know if maybe I'd seen him in books. I'm sure we had Llama Llama Red Pajama. We had that
Yeah.
book. So obviously I knew a little bit about that, but I'd never seen one in person. And I fell in love with this alpaca and was like, that is the coolest animal I have ever seen. And that's what I want to do.
Wow. Wow.
And
That's
so
like
that
it's
was
like
the
when
beginning.
you like soul deep, you have this knowing.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I didn't tell anybody for a while because it was such a crazy idea. I just sort of kind of held it and thought about it. And you know how we do with dreams that come to us and we're like, that's an interesting idea. And so I held on to it for a little while. And then when Annie, who I wrote the cookbook about, she was in Louisville at the time and I was helping take care of her. She was in her final stages of life.
And
So
so
when
tell
she
people who Annie was.
So Annie worked for our family. She's the woman I wrote the cookbook about. She worked for our family, Black woman, and she was the backbone of our family. My mother was an alcoholic, so
Mm.
she was the backbone, and she is what got me through in one
Oh,
solid piece.
yeah.
And the book was a tribute to her cooking and to her.
So her
So it was her
recipes in it.
recipes
Oh,
and the story of her life and the story of our lives together.
how neat.
Yeah. So when
Sounds like that
she
could be like a movie on Hallmark or something.
when she died in 2001, that was sort of the impetus for me to say, okay, it was like God said, okay, you can go wherever you want, you can do whatever you want. What do you want to do? And it was like, I'd already had the idea about an alpaca farm. And I knew I wanted to be in the mountains. And so those two things came together. And I had been to North Carolina for book signings with the cookbook. So that was the obvious place
Oh,
to come look first. So I
oh,
came literally with an idea and with a lot of thoughts of, you have lost your mind. You're crazy to up and leave whatever support system you have to move someplace where you don't know anybody and start over with an infant. Because Will was 1.5 when we looked for property. And the whole time I was driving, I would hear, if it's the right thing for me to do, I'll find a piece of property I can't say no to. And that became the qualifier. And then I found the property that we're on.
I love how you just went with it. And the thing for me is when you have a dream, if you're open to let it unfold, then you just like you were doing this book thing, which was unrelated to the farm thing, but yet you left the door open. It's like I love how when you understand that one opportunity leads you
To
to the
another. Yep.
yes, and
Yep.
to the right things as long as you're paying attention. And I love
Yep.
that so much.
Well, and
And
it's a paying attention and being open
yeah,
and being willing to put an idea out there and take the steps towards it all at
yeah,
the same time.
yeah. And that you were in your head,
Right.
if it's right, it'll come to me. So
Right.
you were in a way asking for the universe's help in your
Exactly.
quest. And I love
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
And so when it probably happened, you're like, we're always shocked when it happens like that.
Right.
But
Right.
then we're
Right.
like, but of course,
But wait.
Yeah, yeah. So how I don't think you had a man in your life.
I did
You
not.
so can you describe what happened with
So when I was touring with the cookbook, I reconnected with a friend kind of from my childhood in Louisville, and we started dating. And so backing up a few years before that, I was a breast cancer survivor. And so one of the things, I didn't follow all of the regular protocols because I was 36 when I found out I had breast cancer and I wanted to still be able to have children.
Mm,
And chemo, I don't know that a lot of people know this, but if you do chemo, you have like a 97% chance of going into early menopause,
mm,
which was not good because I still wanted to leave, even though I wasn't in a relationship, I wanted to leave that option open to have children. So I chose a different route in terms of treatment. I did surgery and then I chose a different route. But the medical point of view is you cannot get pregnant for 5 years after you've had cancer. And a lot of
because the
times people have
estrogen,
gone
I
through
guess.
chemo,
Yeah.
right? So that probably wouldn't be good for your body to get pregnant within 2 years of having had chemo. But that is the medical sort of point of view about it. So I was trying very hard not to get pregnant and ended up pregnant. And so my father, very conservative businessman in Louisville, we were very close, was not on board. He felt like I should put the child up for adoption. And the father, Will's father, was not on board, but wasn't on board, right? Like so on the fence kind of. So so it was me and I just was like, well, this is what I want to do. And then when I went to see my surgeon who had done the breast cancer surgery, he was very adamantly, you need to abort. You
Mm,
need to have an abortion. This is not safe. If the cancer comes back, we can't treat you. And I just kept walking forward and said, no, this is so rare that this would happen. And this is kind of what I've, wanted to happen. And I'm going to trust that this is the right thing,
mm.
which
How
was
far into
very
your
scary.
treatment or recovery was
I was
that?
finished with treatment. So I
Hmm.
was post treatment, year and a half out from having
Okay.
had breast cancer. So
Oh, wow. Hmm.
yeah, about a year from the ending of treatment,
Okay.
maybe a
Wow.
little bit longer. Yeah.
So he was a little angel sent from
He was a little
above.
angel. That's why his name's Will, because it was his will.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there were a lot of things going on all at once, but there was also a very deep knowing that this was right. It felt right. And Annie was still alive when I found out I was pregnant. And she was her words about it were, this is God's child and ain't nobody's business but you and God.
Mm, I
She
love
was
that.
very, very supportive that I went for. And lots of friends and other family members were very supportive. So it wasn't like I was completely didn't have support. It was just that I didn't have those key support figures.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. When did Annie die? How old was Will?
Will was a year and a half old when
Oh,
she died.
so she got to see him.
So she got to see him. She
That's
got to
great.
see him.
That's great.
And we
So,
argued about whose baby he was.
aw,
She said it was it's my baby.
aw, that's great. I'm
Yeah.
sure she
So,
loved that. She probably felt
yeah.
like you were almost a daughter to her.
She did. She did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So when I hear your story, I think, wow, like you're brave, you're strong, you're resilient. I mean, just getting to the point of getting through the breast cancer, deciding to have a child when,
right.
it was the most unselfish thing that you could do and believing that it would be okay. And then just pursuing your passion and a dream. Do you feel that it's turned out because of it was your truth or it was meant to be? What do you think about when you hear those things? Do you think that's all like gobbledygook or
No, I definitely so the thing that's I think difficult when you look back in history, right? So it's really easy to stand here and look back and say, and I did as I was writing this book, I was like, oh my gosh, like I really realized how brave it was. But in the moment, it didn't feel brave. It felt, I'm in this situation, I have these parameters, and what step am I going to take? And I would take those steps. And so it didn't feel like a conscious decision to be brave, although the choices that I made looking back on it look brave. Does that make any
yeah.
sense
Oh
whatsoever?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's easy to say in retrospect that it was brave. I also was moving away from the pain of a father who didn't accept my child.
Mm.
And I was moving away from the awkwardness of his father who didn't really wasn't really at the table, right?
That
So
makes
I
so
was
much sense.
moving away from what was hard and moving towards something that was better.
That is, I get that. I
Yeah.
get that. Makes so much sense as a mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to explain why he doesn't show up to the birthday or why he
Yes.
doesn't show up.
And I also felt like it was my job as a mother to protect him from
Yeah.
any sense of rejection
Hmm.
because he's God's child and he's my child. And there is no rejection in the space if he's not in the, in the space in the face of it.
Yeah. So we really haven't talked about your book. So your book is about the farm.
Yeah, the book is about this whole story, is about from the minute kind of where my life was with Annie as the book came out, and then finding out I was pregnant and that process of trying to figure out what to do, and the surgeon and then the other doctor that was supportive and all of those things. Telling my father and telling his father and all of those things. And then the trip to North Carolina and then what happened afterwards.
Okay. So yeah, it's your kind of a novel, well, autobiography, I guess,
Well, it's
in a
memoir.
way.
It's absolutely memoir.
Memoir. Okay.
And it's based on, it's very much my heroine's journey of
Mm,
how did I handle that situation and where did we get to? And
yeah.
Farm Family, the title is that we left, we came here, we created a farm, which then
Mm.
became the family.
Aw.
So leaving the family of origin, creating a chosen family
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
includes animals.
Yes, absolutely. Being
Yeah,
a animal lover, I absolutely can
right,
relate to that.
right,
Would never, part of me is like, I'm 65, my dog is 4, and I think about he should last a while. But
right.
I worry because I think, well, what do people do when they get older and they still buy a dog and have a puppy, and then the
Of course.
dog might
Yeah,
outlive them, and then what, you got to put your dog in your will, and
that's right.
oh, it's
That's
just
right.
like,
Oh,
oh, I mean, I started getting to that point where I'm like, oh,
right.
but anyways, yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, and
just
it is. It's like it is. There's all those decisions, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, do I want to live without a dog? Is the other decision.
I don't think I ever do.
Yeah, so there's the answer
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. But I don't want to be selfish. But again, you don't know how long you're going to live, and could out, the dog outlive, you could outlive the dog easily.
Right.
So your title is, just so everybody knows, A Farm Family, and then colon, a solo mom's memoir of finding home, happiness, and alpacas. I love that. So before we get into, like, okay, you saw the farm, you saw the land, and then now you have this great business. What is the difference between a llama and an alpaca?
Okay, so a llama is larger than an alpaca. Llamas are usually 300 plus pounds. Alpacas usually max out at about 175. Sometimes they're bigger than that. So the biggest difference, if you see them in the field far away to tell the difference, and you can't judge the size, is llamas have ears that are like banana shaped,
Hmm.
and alpacas have ears that look like a peace sign.
A
Like go
piece.
like a peace sign. Yeah, like a peace sign.
Oh,
So that's how we describe the difference.
so they're closer together, and then
They're
they
closer
kind
together
of
and they kind of
fan
go
out a little
out.
bit.
Yep, yep.
Okay, more like bunny
And
ears,
well, they
I
actually are.
guess.
They're still far apart, but they look more like a peace sign compared to the banana shape of the.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
so interesting. I didn't know
isn't that
that.
interesting? Yeah. So the other difference is that alpacas, their fiber generally, they're prized for their fiber and they're used for their fiber. So they're sheared once a year for their fiber that then can be made into yarn and turned into socks or scarves or sweaters or whatever. And llamas, as babies, are often used as fiber, but as adults, unless they're bred for really good fiber, their fiber isn't as good and they're used more for pack animals. At least
Mm.
that's kind of the way it's been in Peru, Bolivia, and Chile,
Mm.
where they're from. So the
Oh.
llamas tend to be a little bit more domesticated. They're also protective of the alpacas because alpacas are littler. And
Oh.
alpacas are generally a herd animal, so
Oh,
they
interesting.
live in groups
Interesting.
together.
So it's like alpacas are the beauty queens.
They're the beauty queens.
uh,
Yes.
yeah. Like,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. So the other thing is we have the safari park near us. It's
Yes.
it's like it's within a drive.
Yes,
It's
I've
an easy
driven through.
drive.
I have driven
Yeah,
through
yeah.
there.
Natural Bridge. If you're ever in Virginia on going down 81,
Yes,
you have
I've
to
been there.
stop. Whoever's listening, if you ever go down 81, it's
Oh my
right there off the
gosh.
exit, and it is. Oh my gosh, my daughter and son-in-law, my youngest one, they live in Roanoke, so they've gone up and down 81 a million times. He even went to Lexington, which is the college there.
Uh-huh.
They've never been to this party, and his sister now has two kids, and she just went there for the first time, and she could not believe it, that she'd never been there and how great it was. So she was even raving about it. But I have taken my grandkids there like three times. It's like the
Uh-huh.
big treat when they come. We like go to the safari park, but they have a little zoo, and it's like the drive through the park is you go on and on
Mm-hmm.
and on,
Mm-hmm.
and you get this big bucket of food. And the thing about the llamas, and I guess they're alpacas too. I'm really excited now
They
that I
may
can
be
say.
they have guanacos there, which is in the
Oh,
alpaca llama family. So that may be the
so
guanacos.
that's a crossbreed.
In the same species family, but
Oh,
they're all kind of interrelated.
oh,
Just yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
But
and
they're
they're kind
always
of
the
between the cross between an alpaca and a llama a little bit.
okay.
So yeah.
Well, they're the first to the car.
Hmm.
They're the first to the car. They coat your windows with slobber, which is okay. They're so cute, but they eat a lot,
Uh-huh.
and they are very good. They're very neat eaters, unlike the birds that like take a gulp and spit it back out at you. But yeah, it's such a fun thing to do.
That's so
So that's
fun.
I got
We stopped there at least once on our way going when we went back up to New York. We stopped. I noticed it and it was like, oh, that'd be a great stop on the way back. And we stopped. And my thing would be if you're going to do the drive-through part, you have to go tinkle first because
oh
I laughed so
oh my
hard
gosh. Yeah.
at one point as we drove through. First of all, there's signs everywhere that say, do not feed the buckets to the animals. And I'm like, why would I feed a bucket to an animal? Like, I'm just not going to do that. And I looked over at one point and Willis in the seat. There are two camel heads in the car and they're trying to grab the whole bucket. And
Yes.
I am not helping him at all because I am laughing
Yes.
so hard at the scene of these two camels
We
in
have
the
great
car,
video.
right?
Yes.
Trying to eat the bucket.
Yeah.
They want the whole bucket. They
Yeah.
don't just want the food, they want the
Yeah.
whole bucket.
It's so
Anyway,
great. It's so
yeah,
great.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure that
a
was
buffalo, because the buffaloes are kind of at the end,
mhm,
and you got to be careful with the buffalo because they'll just, and you think about it, they have big mouths, big
right.
heads. It's probably kind of like they just like give me the bucket, and they're dirty. Oh, but
Yeah,
it's you have to stop at the zoo too because
yeah.
they have a little zoo in there. You might think it's nothing. They have this aviary, a netted
Hmm.
walk around where you can get these
Hmm.
sticks where the birds
Oh,
just come and land on you. The birds are all over you and they lick the little things on the stick. And there's penguins. And
hmm.
yeah, it's just amazing.
It's a
Monkeys.
great place. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we digress. All right. Back to your
We've gone
farm.
to the zoo.
Yes. Yes. But I know there's somebody that is going to go that direction. It's going to be
Yeah,
curious.
my advice is make sure you tinkle before you do the drive-through part and obey the signs about not feeding your bucket to the animals.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was
Or
so fun.
or where depends.
Yeah, where to pit, right? Oh, it was so fun. It was so
Yeah.
fun.
So how did you get from, oh, that piece of land, that's perfect. How, first of all, how did you know it was perfect? Was it already an alpaca farm, or and then to buying your first alpaca? How many do you have? How many
We have 19 right now.
okay. Do you have any other animals?
We have 19 alpacas, we have 5 llamas, we have 8 donkeys, 20 something goats, Angora goats, 2 horses, some cows. We've got a lot of animals.
Do you ride
Couple of
horses?
pigs. No, we are not riding these horses. One is not right. She's a rescue. She's not rideable. And
Mm.
the other one is we haven't been keeping up her training, so we're not riding her. So they're just pasture buddies. They're
Mm.
they are beautiful lawn ornaments, is what they are.
Oh, expensive
Yeah.
lawn ornaments.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're both very sweet. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
I had a
Yeah.
horse growing up. So, yeah, dogs, cats, a duck.
We
Yeah.
have livestock guardian dogs. We have 4 of those, and We believe one of them is pregnant, so we breed those to sell for other farms that have goats that need a guard for their goats.
Oh, what
So
kind of dog?
they're Great Pyrenees, and
Okay.
they live in the field with the goats, and then the puppies are born in the field with the goats, and they grow up together so that they are safe as livestock guardian dogs for goats and other small animals. So
Do you do goat yoga?
we do.
You do? Oh my
We
gosh, I'm gonna have
do.
to come
When we
visit.
have the goat kids, we do. We do goat yoga for about 6 or 8 weeks in the summer.
How fun is that?
Yeah, it's loads of
Yeah.
fun. It
Yeah,
should be called laugh yoga because that's all anybody does
exactly.
is laugh during it. But it's
Uh,
great, great fun.
I did not expect a guess with that one. Yeah.
I
I was just like,
resisted that for
haha,
a
I'm gonna
long
ask her
time.
this. And
I
yeah.
know. I resisted for a long time. And the Angora goats are a fiber animal just like the alpacas are. We shear them for their fiber, but they produce a lot more, so we shear them twice a year. So the Angora goats have already been sheared in the last 3 weeks, and they'll get sheared again in October. And then we'll be having kids near the end of this month. So we'll
Mm.
start kidding goats and have goat kids running around. They're so cute. And the Angora goats are really sweet natured. So they have horns, but they're super, super sweet natured. And so people call them, like to joke about them being poodles or lamb doodles because they're
Oh,
so sweet and so cute. And so part of our tour is people get to feed the goats, which is a great highlight of the thing. They don't spit like the alpacas do, so we don't have to worry about that part of it, and you get to feed them. So
do you do the farm tours year round, or is it only
we
certain
do.
times of the
We're
year?
open year round. We do them year
Oh, that's
round. Yeah.
amazing. And is it on, you say, oh, you schedule your tours or,
We schedule them in advance. Yeah. You
okay,
jump
so you have to
online
call.
and
All right.
you can book a ticket for a tour.
What's your
And
website?
applehillfarmnc.com.
Okay. So
Yeah.
for North Carolina. Okay,
Yeah, for
good.
North
So
Carolina.
we'll put that in the show notes, but I always
Yeah.
like to mention it
Yeah.
because sometimes people have a hard time finding show
Yeah,
notes.
it's a great family event. It takes
Oh,
about an hour to go through, and the tour starts at the barn. We go around, we see the top part of the farm, the animals. We're on top of the mountain, so our views are spectacular.
oh,
So you
wow.
get to see the views. And we're on the site of a old growth apple orchard. Like right now, the trees are huge, but they're in bloom and it's
Mm.
snowing apple blossoms right now.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and then so we tour around the top part of the farm and end up in the store, but you really get a sense of the farm and the animals. You hear some of the stories of the animals and how we name them and things like that. So it's very educational and lots of questions like how can I tell the difference between an alpaca and a llama and where do they come
Yeah.
from? What's their gestation? All those things.
Yeah. So how did you learn what you know? Was it a lot of on the job or so like tell me how you got started?
So sort of the backwards way. So after we bought the property, we built a barn to get ready for having a farm and animals.
And when you say
Um,
we, you're talking about you and Will.
Will and I and the crew that built the barn. Obviously it wasn't me.
Yeah, I just want to
And
remind people that you did
yes,
you
yeah,
were manless.
I was
Manless.
I had a little
Uh,
man. I had a little
yeah, yeah,
man.
yeah, little
My
man, but
man was
that's
little.
partnerless, I should say.
Partnerless.
But yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So, and you still are
And I
partnerless.
still am. I
Yeah.
still am. And so we built the barn, and then I kept hearing this story about a woman that lived close by who had alpacas. And then I heard the story. We were thinking maybe this was in 2003. We built the barn. We were thinking maybe beginning of 2004 we would start looking into alpacas. But I heard that she was moving to Virginia. So I sped everything up and went to see her. And I trained with her, and she was amazing. Her name was Terry Phipps, and she was so knowledgeable in the alpaca industry. She'd been in the business in Colorado at the very beginning of the alpaca industry, and she had the heart of a teacher. So she knew so much. And so I would go to her farm every time the vet came. I would go to her farm and help her feed. I would go and help her do all sorts of things, which is how I learned. And then
How resourceful. That is so amazing. Another
I know,
example of this unfolding for you.
and literally, as the crow flies, less than a mile away,
Oh my gosh. So
right? Like
you
you,
actually got the land, built the barn with the
and then went
intention.
to an alpaca farm.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. The
passion
way,
for
I
you.
mean, the way you're supposed to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Now people come and say, I want to have alpacas. I'm like, go tour a bunch of farms.
That's right. Because I mean,
That's
by
what you do.
volunteering, you
Yeah.
really understand how
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
is it going to be, how much am I going to like this? And then I
Right.
imagine being there for the vet visits, understanding the expense.
Well, and how to organize it, right?
Mhm.
Because even doing that, there was so much that I didn't know about that. But just, so the vet's going to come, and as farm owners and animal owners, we do as much of the vet work as we can because it's cheaper, right? If for us here at the farm, the only thing that we do not do for our animals is rabies shots. Everything else we're allowed to do. Legally, we're allowed to do. I think in Virginia you can actually do the rabies shot, but you have to get it from a vet. Maybe, I'm not sure. But so we do as much of that because at $10 a shot and $15, whatever they charge to give the shot, if I can give a shot, it's a lot cheaper. So we do most of that work ourselves. And obviously, in an emergency, if we need help figuring out what to do next, we would call the vet. But we know now, after 20 years, almost anything that's going on, we know what the next step should be or a question that we should ask. And often the vet comes and he'll look at me and he'll go, what do you think? And the other thing is that we take our dogs to the vet, and sometimes they let you stay in the room, sometimes they don't, right? And they take the dog from you and then they go do whatever. When you are a farmer and the vet comes to you, you are his assistant.
Mhm.
So it's like, can you hand me XYZ over there? And oh, by the way, can you hold this or can you hold the animal? So you end up being that person for the vet. And nobody, there isn't any like, oh, by the way, when we come, we're going to need you to hold. They don't
Mm.
ask or tell or anything. It's just assumed that you
Yeah.
will be there and be a part of it, which is great because I grew up going to every vet visit with our dogs growing up. I mean, if I'd been a better student, I might have been a vet.
Mm.
I loved animals that much. So that wasn't a far cry for me, but there is an element of learning how to do it and
Yeah.
feeling comfortable. And then everybody who comes to work for us gets trained, that's working with the animals gets trained on how to do it. So
So that's
we
another
give,
aspect of your job. It's
right,
like not just
right.
owning a farm and running the farm and the animals and making sure they're healthy, making sure they're happy, but it's a business. So you have employees.
Hmm.
You have to
Hmm.
manage
Right,
people and
right,
make sure people are happy. And if they're not,
right,
deal with that. You're HR.
right, right. And because we're open to the public, so we've got, we talk about it as having value chains in our business. And one of our value chains in the business is our customers, obviously, right? The people who come to tour. But the other value chain, probably the most important and maybe equally important, is the animals and then the people, right? So my employees, I mean, I want my employees to be happy. I want them to be
Mhm.
learning when they're here and it not just be a job, right? That
Right. They'll
they
stay.
come, yeah, and we have a goal that if you come to work for us, you leave a better employee than you came.
Mm.
So you come in with whatever skill set and you leave at another level. And a lot of our employees and team are in college here in town at App State or at Lees McRae. So we have a lot of college students and a lot of post college or post high school students that are trying to figure out what they're going to do next, and they'll come work for us for a year or two before they move on. And it's a great place because you're working with people, you work with retail, you work with animals,
Yeah.
and there's just this incredible skill set that they get to work with.
How
You
did
know,
you learn where'd you get your business know-how?
Probably my father, he was a big business guy. I think that, and just learning it on the fly. I mean, most of what you learn with a farm is just the day to day. And it's never over. There's always something new to learn, right?
Yeah.
Like the learning curve never ends. Like there's
I
always something new being
yeah.
thrown,
Well, I
right?
just think of there's the farm aspect, but there's the running a business,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
finances, the
yeah,
the
yeah,
managing the people and making
yeah,
that's there's some shitty managers out there.
yeah, yeah. And
And
hopefully they're not here. I think they
it's
are.
sometimes, I mean, I think that's all learned. I think there's a natural, some people are natural, but there are things that you need to learn, I think. And so credit to you that you've done this. It's
Yeah.
really amazing. When your person reached out to me and introduced your story to me, I was like, yes. Or you might have filled out an application. I can't remember how it came about. But
Yeah.
when I saw your
Yeah.
story, I was like, oh my gosh, of course. Of course I
Yeah.
want to talk to
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
Very
And
inspiring.
it is very multifaceted, which fits me, right? That's a very fitting thing for me to do. I get bored easily. God has my number and says, just keep this girl busy. Like, whatever you do, keep her busy. Because if she's not busy, she's going to be in trouble. And the team here at the farm, I'll take it 2 days off, and they're like, oh gosh, she's going to come back with 6 ideas. Because I'm like, oh, we could do, and we could do, and we could do,
Yeah,
because
I
I get all
love that.
excited and fired up. So,
So tell me about your love life. Is it non-existent? I mean, we got to get into that.
well, I mean, I love my life. I don't have a love interest that is a male human at this point. So at this point, I don't.
But
So
you're not like, no, you're not like, I'm not dating because
no, no,
I'm
no,
I'm just
no,
like, after that experience, I want nothing to do
no,
with
no,
it.
no,
So
absolutely not.
yeah,
Absolutely not. Some of it, a little bit of it is that I don't have a whole lot of time to invest in it.
that's yes, I would
You know what I
imagine.
mean?
I would
Like,
imagine.
yeah.
You need to find a vet.
I know.
I love the show. I just saw that the new season came out. Heartland, I think it's called.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Great show. Great
yeah.
show. Great show.
So yeah, so I had to ask that question, and of course, raising a son. I mean, he didn't have to deal with a crappy stepfather or anything. So
Nope.
I love
Nope.
that you kind of
Nope.
dedicated your life to him.
Yeah.
Dr. Laura would be proud because that's what she believes. If
Which
you
is that what
yeah,
she
you
says?
either
Yeah.
stick in a terrible marriage for the sake of the kids, which I don't agree with, but yeah,
Right.
you shouldn't date and you're just basically off
No,
the
and
market.
a lot of the time when he was growing up, I didn't date. Number one, I didn't have the emotional energy to, and
Hmm.
I just couldn't figure out how that works with a kid.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't like I could send him off for the weekend and actually have a weekend,
that's
right? I was
right.
24/7.
That's
So I
right.
didn't even have, I think part of it was I didn't have that space to even think about looking. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And
Yeah.
then I started writing a book. Doing things on top of having a farm. Very
Hmm.
involved in our community. I'm involved at the state level with agritourism, so I just have this, I don't know, it's like this energy that stays really strong and solid about things that I want to do and contribute. And so it's like unless a guy kind of comes along, I mean, I don't think I'm going to sit here and look for somebody, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're true to what sounds like how you operate, if it's the right thing, it'll come along, right?
Exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
When I had a retreat in Sedona last September, and I met a woman who I had her come in and do a sound healing session.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't have asked. She was like the third person. Everybody I called, they're like, I can't do it that weekend. Try this person. So the third time a charm. She was great. She was not only was she my age, so it was great because the people at the retreat were that age, so she could really relate to them and they could relate
Right,
to her. But
right.
she had the most beautiful love story, and she was very
Mm,
recently first time married, and
mm-hmm.
she had this dream, and then the relationship. I even had her on my podcast, so it was so powerful. But yeah, and she one day realized that what she was living at the moment was what she had dreamed about like 7, 8 years previous.
Oh,
Yeah. It's
wow.
like really
Wow.
crazy. Still gives me chills, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But the question I have, and then we need to wrap up, but how did you find time to write a book? I mean, it's
So,
pretty motivating.
very intentionally, like it was one of those things. And I broke it down into pieces. So I wasn't writing a book every day. I was writing a piece of the book. I went away for the weekend a lot, or for a few days at a time.
Hmm.
And I would go, I mean, there were lots of places that I went. I took 10 years. So
Okay, I
like
was going to ask what
from
was
beginning to through with writing and into edit, it was like 10 years. So
right.
I wasn't very fast about it.
Well, I
Um,
like that as an example because people think that's a big thing. Like I want to write a book, but I think sometimes it's too overwhelming.
right, right.
But I like where you just, sounds like you just went away and spent time on certain sections.
Right. And I had it broken down into different sections that and scenes that needed to be written. So I would work on one scene and when I first started writing it, I worked, well, all during the writing, I worked with somebody. It's, all through it. It wasn't, I definitely was not alone. Was in a group or,
Support
in some
system.
way, so some sort of support system. So it wasn't just me. I mean, I was the one going away to sit down and write. But one of the first things that I was told was that only 20% of what you write will end up in the book. And I was like, no, like I'm going to write 80% more than what ends up in the book. Like that's insane, right? There's no way. So, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to be organized about it. I'm going to write, I know what I need to write so that I won't have to write 80% more. It's totally true. 80% of it's on the cutting room floor. And some of it was scenes that I needed to write in order to
Mm,
write the scenes that I wanted to write, right?
yes.
Like the process writing that I had to do, or I would
Yes.
start writing about something and realize that I still had some trauma around something and I would have to write about that. And there was a lot of writing getting to the writing of the book that went
Yeah.
on,
So true.
right? And
Yeah.
so and
And
it's
it probably
mem
gets better too, the more once you process that stuff,
oh totally.
it becomes so
Totally.
much higher quality stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
totally. And yeah, and it's memoir too. It's not fiction, right? So
Mhm.
it's memoir and it's my emotions around different things. And I had to write a long time to get me out of the story, right? Because it's my story, but it's not my story. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So that then if you read it, it becomes your story. And
Mhm.
it's not just me on the page. It's like if you've ever been to anything where somebody starts talking about an event that they're not complete with and they start crying and they're not complete and then you're left with their emotion about whatever it was that they were talking about, so you have to get all that out for it to be a clean story
Mhm.
and to
Mhm.
find the story in the story.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of writing that went on that isn't even in the book.
Mm.
And there's probably I could write two more memoirs probably that would be specific subjects or times, you know, subjects in time, whatever. I don't know that I will, but I could.
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
So, and in closing, let me ask you this. What do you like about your life right now?
Easier to say would be what I don't like about my life,
Mm.
right? And that would be I'm moving in lots of different directions and I'm not really up to date with like the physicality that I need around me to stay present with it. Does that
Mm.
make sense? Like I need a major overhaul of the closet and just those things that how the kitchen's organized or how this is organized. That would be the thing that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But I love everything. It's such a great
Well,
life.
what you're saying is that list is very short, what you
Yeah.
don't like.
Yeah.
And so the list, it's hard to pick because
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And
Yeah.
what does Will think of his mom? Do you think
Oh, I don't know. He's a guy. So who
24?
knows
That's
what
what
he
you said.
thinks? He's
Yeah. I
24.
don't think we ever said how old you are. You're 63.
I'm 63. I'll be
Yes.
64 in December. Yeah.
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 Yeah. More power to
So,
you.
and all of this, the farm started at 40 and the book started at 50 and the book
Hmm.
got published at 63. If
Mm.
anybody needs encouragement that it's not too late.
Do you have another book in your future, do you think?
I think so. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
We definitely have another alpaca or two or three in your future, right?
Oh, totally. Totally.
Do you
I
still
have,
love them?
oh, I do. Oh my gosh, they're so amazing. They're so amazing. Such amazing creatures.
What's,
And it's
what's
funny, I just went to the national show. I was promoting the book and I was at the National Alpaca Show and I was like, okay, this is like my energy field. There are 700 alpacas here and me. Like I still love alpacas and their energy and, all the things that go along with that. So,
so I think the toughest thing for me, if I
mhm.
lived your life, would be not being able to be one on one with an animal. I just would have to, it was so many to attend to and
Oh, true.
to
Yeah.
love on. And it's like I mean, I guess they have each other to love on, but I'd feel
Yeah.
like I was neglectful in a way because I'd be like, oh, I just don't have enough time for
All of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Harry and Louise
Yeah.
and whatever all
Yeah.
the names are.
Right.
I
Carrie
I
and Louise.
I
We have
got my
Thelma
dog.
and Louise are our pigs, Thelma and
Oh, how
Louise.
funny.
But see, the beauty of that is I have a team of people, right? And I have the people who come to visit. So it's
Yeah.
not just
So
me
they
giving
get
them
that.
attention.
Yeah.
They're laughing at their names and their antics and
Yeah.
their silliness and
And I think probably the problem with my dog is he needs other people because he's so
yeah,
attached to me. It's like he's almost
right.
obnoxious. So we don't want that. But yeah, so it's good to spread the love. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for coming. It's been a delight to talk to you. And you don't
Thank
live
you.
too far. So I'm going to have to come down and do a
No.
tour,
Yeah.
get some socks.
Yeah. This has
So
been
I
great.
need a
Thank you. This
shawl.
I know this has been a great conversation. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. And good luck with your book. I'm very excited for you. And hopefully people tune in and I have been reading. One of my goals was to read 12 books this year because I have not been reading enough. It's just like,
Hmm.
and I only read
Hmm.
personal development usually. So I was
Hmm.
like, I want to read other things.
Right.
And I'm on my 13th book. I'm about to finish my 13th book.
Already. So your goal was to read 12 for the year and you're already on number 13. That's
Yes.
awesome.
I was very much influenced by my daughter. She got me into it and she started recommending books to me. And so I'm like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been
Yeah.
doing Audible. Do you have it on
I
Audible?
listen it we just recorded it, so it will
Okay.
be out probably I want to say end of June. I haven't heard a date, but it has been recorded and it is in my voice.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah. So I just was in Asheville for 9 days recording it. So
Oh, I heard that's hard to do.
it's an interesting
It's
process.
exhausting. Yeah.
It is
People
very
don't realize.
exhausting.
Yeah.
It's very exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
good for you. Good for you. I
Yeah.
love it when the authors do their books.
I think so. I agree. I agree. I
Mhm.
mean, some authors shouldn't, but most
Yeah.
authors I think should.
I had an interview once on my podcast, and the woman had won I think it's called an Audie.
Yes,
And
an Audie. Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah, she was a great voice actress. I didn't know it was a thing. So yeah,
Yes.
there's a,
Yes.
mhm,
Yeah. Well, there's a whole group of people that's all they do
yeah,
is record other people's books.
yeah,
And some people don't record their own books. I mean, quite a few people don't. Some of
right,
the more prolific writers that write, a book a year probably don't
yeah,
even try to.
right.
So,
Yep, yep,
understandable.
yep,
Understandable.
yep.
So,
Well, thanks so much. And
thank you. It was
listen, I know,
great to
thanks
talk
for
to you.
spending time away from your alpacas
Yeah.
to be with us. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.